that now. So after baseball was done, you realized that wasn't going to work. You went into the insurance business. That was your next step?
Yeah, financial services business, and that really was not. That was a mistake. I was not cut out for that. But shortly into that, I was diagnosed with 3 very serious health problems, including end-stage renal failure, hypogammaglobulinemia, which is a deficiency of the gamma globulin production in your body, which helps you fight off infection and gives you energy. I had a rare type of sleep apnea, central nerve apnea, so I had to start sleeping with BiPAP. The hypogam required a $10,000 IV treatment once a month. And, less than a year and a half after fighting to come back, I was on dialysis and ultimately there, not too long after that, received my first of 3 kidney transplants, all less than 2 years after being out of the game. So that was just huge change. And in speaking today, I'm often asked to talk about change because we all face change. We all face proverbial curves in life. And that I did.
How mentally did you grasp all that and handle all that? Did you have support at home?
Oh, I certainly had support at home with my wife, of course, although she loved baseball. So she was disappointed that ended because she just loved baseball, and she was a Mets fan and she was a Rangers fan. But regardless, that's not what you're talking about. But she was very supportive. She was the best thing that could have happened to me there in the end of '86, even better than winning and being a part of that World Series team. I also had another strong part of my life, which was my faith, and that was a foundation that helped me to overcome what ultimately occurred. That was the most challenging part. Was after my first transplant there, a year and a half, 2 years after my career ended. I take 35 to 40 pills a day, and many of those are to keep the body from rejecting a transplant. And those meds have a lot of side effects, and different people are affected different ways. I can grow chest hair 6 inches long. I was a hairy dude before, but now I can grow them all in the wrong place. That's just one of the side effects of these type medications, but there's many side effects, and two that I was impacted by greatly was mood swings and depression. And a year and a half after my first transplant there in 2002, by the fall of the following year, I found myself in my basement with a loaded 357, and I was considering quitting. Fortunately, I had what you asked the question: what helps you? What did you have to help get you through these things? Well, when you're that low in life, you need foundations. And I had a great family upbringing. I had a wonderfully supportive wife that I couldn't do that to her. That was a major impact in any decision. I don't think there was really a decision. I think I was being a wimp, but I ended up there. The third thing was my faith. I just knew, in the depths of my despair, chemically induced by the medications, that this isn't what God wanted me to do. It was not. My wife certainly wouldn't. My family would have been devastated. So by the time I put down that gun in the basement and walked up the 13 steps, I had already made a game plan to be proactive in 3 areas of my life. I had to get back to the basics of my faith. I realized that I had been just slipping away, and that foundation in my life wasn't helping me. So, but that was my fault because I wasn't involved in that, being proactive. Secondly was my wife and my family, a great foundation that I couldn't make a stupid move like that and just eliminate myself from the lives of others that loved me. And the third thing was I had been to a professional conference in the financial services business in Denver, Colorado, and I heard from and met and eventually became friends with one of the greatest motivational speakers of all time, Mr. Zig Ziglar. And he said, and I remembered this in the basement, and this was the final third thing that was so important in my comeback. He said, you can change where you're at in life by what you put into your mind. And in high school, I was a 396 GPA and fourth class of 600 and some, but I hated reading. I never read those big books. Cliff Notes got me through. But I became a reader, and I became a cassette listener. everything from the Bible to Anthony Robbins to maybe even Buddha or whoever those people are. Anything positive I was filling my brain with. Is, like a computer, garbage in, garbage out, or good in, good out. And so with those three things, I began to move forward. And ironically, uh, less than a week later, because I know you're going to ask me about the speaking, so I might as well just tell you. Less than a week later, a former Chiefs player, a friend of mine, called me, and he was in charge of getting speakers for the local Rotary Club. And he said, Ed, man, we had a meeting tomorrow, and the guy I had scheduled just called me and bailed. Can you come and just share your story? And he had no idea what was going on in my life, where I had just been the day before. He called the day after I was in the basement. And I was not Superman yet, or never have been Superman, but I hadn't come back yet. But I had the foundation. And I said, Dave, I can't, I'm not feeling good physically. I just had this transplant, blah, blah, blah. And Dave just kept twisting my arm. And I'm like, all right, Dave, I'll be there. So I go to this Rotary Club the next day and I used to talk a lot in the minor leagues to, kids groups and stuff. So, I was a speaker, but I could talk. And I went there and talked for 20 minutes, just told my story. And at the end of it, people were like, here I am 24 hours from the basement with loaded 3D7 to people telling me that, wow, that was very touching, or I was inspired. And finally, the last person before Dave and I left was the president of the club, who handed me a business card, shook hands with me. He said, listen, Ed, that was fabulous. He said, for an old job, you tell a great story, and corporate America pays people like you to go out and share that with in corporate settings, associations, all kind of groups. And he said, if you'd like to, I'd love to sit down and tell you what I do. I book speakers into events. And I said, well, thank you, sir, but the timing's not good. And I didn't tell him where I was at 24 hours, but I took his card, and I never told Dave Lindstrom, the chief guy who took me there. I just went home. But I started to implement those 3 steps that I had decided on. And 6 months later, I called that fellow back, and we had lunch. And he said, most speakers become speakers, kind of like a hooker becomes a hooker. First, you do it for a friend, then a friend of a friend, and then a friend of a friend's friend says, hey, how much will you pay me to do that for me or my people? And so literally that's what happened 23 years ago. And, today, 23 years ago, I've spoken all over the country. I was doing as many as 80 to 90 engagements a year.